Welcome, everyone, to another People First training. My name is Michael Richards. I am the chapter coordinator for People First of Ohio. Today we have with us Craig Walker. He's the coordinator for People First of Ohio, and he's also vice president of um, the ARC for
For
disabilities.
advocacy.
Yeah, advocacy. Yes. Um, I'm gonna turn it over and I'm gonna let Craig talk about the trip to DC.
Okay. Well, we're going to explain about the trip that we went on, and there are some folks here that went to Washington D.C. To advocate, and we are excited to talk about that. I'm probably going to rely on them for a lot of questions, and there's a certain point where we'll talk about what we did and how we did it. And we're going to talk about how you can get involved in local, state, and national issues. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see that. How to connect with state and national policymakers. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about local as well. I even got a phone call this week from a People First group here locally in my area that had heard of all the issues that were going on and wondered how they could get involved. Well, we talk about that a lot on our state People First meetings. So we encourage all of our chapters to come to the board meetings. We had one this morning at 10 a.m. And we talked about a few issues, and John Hanna shared how he went and testified for the state budget. And that got us into a conversation of how can we do more? What kind of things can we do to beef up our advocacy efforts? So, to that end, we are also coming up with a group that is called our policy committee that will be talking about local, state, and national policies and learning how to testify at the State House, learning how to approach our politicians and what to say and how to say it. So, a lot of that is going to be included in this training today. And the first thing, we're just going to start out with a local level, trying to get to know your politicians. So, getting involved on a local level can mean quite a few different things. Attending your commissioner's meeting. One of the commissioner's jobs is to appoint people to the Board of Developmental Disabilities. So, if you've ever thought about becoming a member of the County Board of Developmental Disabilities, which is a volunteer position, that's where you would start. Get to know your commissioners and get involved with local groups. So if you're a Democrat or a Republican, there are local Democrat and Republican groups in each county. They hold events throughout the year. They invite state politicians and federal politicians to come and speak at their meetings. So you'll have a chance to get to meet them and to shake hands with them and to say, hey, I'm involved with a local self advocacy group that is made up of people with developmental disabilities. And here are some of our issues. How can you help us? So, getting involved with your local groups could be Rotarians speaking at a Rotary Club. And I know Michael and I have mentioned this multiple times, but every community with a Rotary group, they meet anywhere from 12 to 52 times per year, and they're always looking for a speaker. Let that be your group. A lot of your local politicians are involved in those type of groups like Rotary or Kiwanis, and they love to have special guest speakers. So go hang out with them, have something to eat, enjoy a cup of coffee and a donut if it's a breakfast, or they may feed you lunch if you're there at lunchtime. Um, Tell them what your group does and what you advocate for. So that's, attending your local parties, local events, I know Governor DeWine spoke here locally in our county. I believe it was last year, and some of the senators and the candidates are there. So it's an easy way to get in touch with your politicians. And then tell them that you'd like to volunteer to serve on a committee. So if you're in the southern part of Ohio, especially the southeastern portion, we have what is called the Appalachian region. And there is an Appalachian committee that meets to work on issues that are all based from Highland, Brown, Adams on up through to Belmont and Jefferson counties and even beyond. So it's a big group. You can volunteer to be on a group like that, where you help make choices of where to spend local dollars that come in from the state or the federal government. Um, Volunteer to serve on some of these committees, get to know people. So that's how you get to know the politicians. You can go to their office. They have office hours. You can speak with their aides, get to know their aides really well, because that's the key to getting in with the politician. And then practice your advocacy. So you got to know, what are the topics that you care about? And you can make a list and say, okay, Medicaid. Medicaid's important to me. And every once in a while, we'll say, tell your story. We want to know, how does Medicaid affect your life? If we're going to advocate for you, if we're going to help you advocate, we need to have personal stories. So when we get into talking about walking into Washington, D.C. offices, one of the ladies from Cincinnati had a booklet, and it was printed up. It was nothing fancy, but it was pictures of people that she knew that shared their personal stories. So here's a person that receives Medicaid in Hamilton County. And here's this person's picture. Here's this person's story. They worked on, what transportation means to them, how they get to the doctor, how important Medicaid was to them. So we need to know, how do I tell my story? And we'll get into some resources of how to click on some websites and actually tell your story, or how to go and find out where your representative's office is. And then the last thing on this slide says, practice your story at a People First group with peers. So work on a topic. If it's Medicaid, or if it's transportation, or if it's housing that you want to work on, write up something about it and then say to your group, I want to share this tonight. And ask for feedback. We need to get people up in front of folks telling their story and practicing how to do their advocacy. It's so much easier to start with the people you're comfortable with. Because as you'll see, like when you walk into Washington, D.C. offices, some of our folks were pretty nervous. But it is your story. Nobody can take that away from you. So practice it. Practice it with your group, practice it with your family, with your friends, and just get up and speak. Tell your story. So what is effective? One of the things that's effective is visiting the legislators in person. It could be writing a letter. Not many people write letters anymore. So if they get something in the mail, it takes it a long time to get there to their offices. So I tell people, writing a letter is a little old school. And if you've ever watched the news and saw that maybe a congressperson or a senator got a suspicious package, they scan every bit of mail before it reaches their office. So it goes through a department and they make sure it's safe, that there's nothing inside the envelope that's going to hurt a person. So writing a letter takes a lot longer, but sending an email is instant. And we'll get into that. I'll show you here in a little bit a really, really easy way to send an email to your legislators. And then, of course, calling. Their offices all have phones, and you can call them and tell what your story is, why these things are important to you. So, this is a little bit about what we did in Washington, D.C. So, you'll see the pictures here um, of us either inside the offices or outside the offices. And there's a whole big team from Ohio that went. There was over 40 people. Um, Obviously, we're dressed a little different than we normally dress. You don't normally see me in a tie or a suit, but that's exactly what we did. We got dressed up to visit those offices in Washington, D.C. There was a lot of walking, but we had a really good time. We were able to meet with some of the aides, and the bottom right picture is my U.S. representative, and that's David Taylor. And we actually got to meet with him. He was one of the few that was in his office at the time of all of our meetings. So I'm going to stop sharing there for a minute, and I'm going to pick on some people because I know that there are some folks in here that went to Washington, D.C. I saw Courtney. And I saw Elise. Elise was there. I don't know if Elise is still on. There she is. And then Adam Engel, the president of People First of Ohio, Janelle Zumberger, and Adam Thompson were there. Am I missing anyone else that went on the trip to the Disability
Wasn't
Policy
Renee
Center?
there? I think Renee was there.
Yeah, and I think
Reached out
she's
to her.
probably in the room there.
There she
I
is.
see a hand. See a
I just
wave.
saw that the Zoom account had her name on it. I
Yeah.
assume she was.
So, Adam, we're talking about this trip. What did you think was the most important part of the trip for you?
It was getting to hear the perspective of the representatives.
Hmm.
Representative Taylor, I believe it was. It was nice to hear what it was that he thought, because if you're talking to them and they're talking about something completely different, then it's easier to know who's talking about what and kind of find some middle ground. But if one side doesn't even know what the other side wants, then we can't find any common ground. If we can talk to each other and find out what common ground, what Representative Taylor wanted, what his vision for that issue was, and what our vision was, and see if we could come to some kind of we can agree that this is needed, or we can agree that maybe we don't need that. We can agree that there isn't funding for that priority, or we can agree that we need funding for this priority, and maybe he changes his mind. But you never know
Absolutely.
until you have the discussion.
Absolutely. And it's a good point. When we were in Representative Taylor's office, he is new. He is new to the whole political scene. He is a business owner from around my area and has a great business. Everybody around here knows it. And he is now representing us in Washington. So a lot of the topics he was not aware of, and it's because he's fairly new and he knows one side of it, but he doesn't know maybe your side. So, Adam T and Janelle, what did you think was an important part of what we did?
Well, the important thing was while we were in DC, we talked about, like what is important about Medicaid and Medicare, because, we did tell one of Jim Jordan's reps that, hey, we don't want anything cuts, unlike any cuts to Medicare or Medicaid, because that would just definitely be pointless, because without Medicaid and Medicare, we wouldn't get to our appointments. We would never get near anything to that, because we don't want that to happen. We want we want us to be safe. We want us to have, like a whole thing, because Jim Jordan, he probably understands about what's going to happen in the future, because he thinks that, okay, if Medicaid gets cut, then what will happen to all the people with disabilities? So,
Exactly. So one of the things, you mentioned some pretty specific things, like telling what would happen. So to get to appointments, a lot of legislators that are new don't realize that Medicaid pays for that transportation. Those waiver services can pay for that transportation. So telling those stories enlightens them as to how far reaching Medicaid is. Janelle, what did you think?
I like the part where we sat in those meetings the 2 days before we went, or those days that before we went and sat down and talked to our assistant. I like the one part where one of the guys says, "We're not waste and we're not fraud."
Exactly. So what Janelle's talking about is we had 2 days of trainings to talk about the topics that we wanted to discuss and how to approach the folks and to how to form those stories. So those 2 days were trainings, and they were kind of long days. But it was good. We had 900 some people, I believe, in the room. So we weren't alone. And we were able to talk about those with people who are experts on this and that are in Washington, D.C. all the time. Courtney or Elise, what did you think? How do you think it went? Courtney, do you want to share? Because I knew you were there.
Yeah, is it okay if I share?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so, I know for me, honestly, my favorite part besides getting to, network with people and meet different people from different states, and also what you touched on, like learning how to tell our stories, um, was the Hill Day. 'Cause then that was when we actually got to take what we learned and talk to our legislators, and I really enjoyed that.
Awesome.
I will say that, and I mentioned this in the survey that they sent out, I will say that it felt like, at least for me, that the information was not very easy to understand, so I suggested, having like plain language more, and because it wasn't very easy to understand, at least for me, it wasn't.
Wonderful. Very technical, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we need to that's a perfect way of advocating to the advocates. Sometimes we don't think we have to advocate to advocates, but sometimes we do. Have that clear language, have plain, easy to understand language. And that's not just for us. That is for the politicians as well. So when we're explaining what Medicaid does, and they see that transportation gets me to my dentist appointment and to my eye doctor and to my specialist appointment, that's clear language to them.
Mm.
They don't want to hear a rule. They created the rules, right? We don't need to spout those things off to them. They need to hear what it means to me. Elise, did you have anything that you'd like to share from the trip? You're
Hi.
muted. There you
Yeah,
go.
of
Hi.
course. Hi. I went to the potential sections. It was a kind of all that kind of fun things up there, and I met the news one is the staff looks there,
Okay.
that, and meet the Emily Stakes staff there. It's really a kind of talk to. And it's really more expressing of yourself. That's your energy, and it has to your it's like speak up and use your voice and say about your life and your motives.
Mhm.
And they talk about minimum wage and get
Right.
money. Yeah. So
There was a lot of topics like the sub-minimum wage. We discussed that in our meetings as well. And Elise brings up a good point. Sometimes it's not the politician that you meet, it's their aides. But something that I noticed, and it was especially in the one big meeting where I know Latasha's not here, but she had to work today, and hopefully she'll be able to jump on here in a little bit. But where the majority of us were in one meeting, and I believe it was Jim Jordan's office, the aide wrote down everything we said, everything that was talked about. They took great notes. And we know because they're public knowledge that they make a copy of those and they make sure that legislator gets all of your issues. So I think that most of it was very positive. Everything that we heard seemed to be positive. Um, and we just now have to wait and make sure that they follow through on what they say they're going to follow through. So I'm going to go back to sharing. Thank you guys for helping out with that. That's awesome. I think everybody did a wonderful job um, telling their stories and just getting that word out. And I thank everybody that took their time to go because I know it was quite a trip. All right, let me see if I can get here. Okay, some extra things to do. And we'll take questions at the end if you have any questions, but the extra things to do, know the issues. So this is something that I was in a state meeting, and I shared this at the board meeting, but I was in a state meeting with state politicians, and everything that was discussed in that meeting, federal stuff that they didn't have any control over. So we need to know what issues are what. What do we talk about locally? What do we talk about at the state? What do we talk about when we go to Washington, D.C. or talk to our senators that represent us in Washington and our Congress people that represent us in Washington? So know those important issues and talk about those with your advocacy group. A lot of people say, we don't have anything to talk about in our People First group. Really? Really? There's nothing that you would like to change? And we've got lots of stuff. Follow the organizations that advocate, follow them on social media, get to understand what the issues are. And then check your call to action emails and websites. So there are several websites that have call to actions. You may agree with them, you may disagree with them. It's okay. When you click on that call to action, it takes you to an email to your politicians. And you tell whether you agree or disagree. We don't all have to agree on the same thing, right? That's the important part about being a self advocate. Don't just follow along because everybody else is doing it. Tell your story and what these things mean to you. So, some of the resources that I wanted to pull up here is legislature.ohio.gov, ohiohouse.gov, the Arc of Ohio, and there's a website there where you can click on legislatures. And then there's a pluralpolicy.com that you can find your legislator. So I'm going to add those in when we post the videos of this training. And also SARTAC. SARTAC has a great guide that you can use with your People First groups, and it's called They Work for Us. And there's actually several sessions that you can do It's a guide to getting through to your elected officials. But there are multiple sessions there that you can do as a group to learn about all of this stuff. So the one is your United States Senator. Now, let me see if I can share that. Now, if you go to that website, can you guys see the United States Senate website? Okay, I've got some head nods. It's kind of small print, and I'm sorry about that. But once you go to it, these are our two senators for the state of Ohio, Bernie Moreno and John Husted. If I click on web form for Bernie Moreno, it takes me to a little bit about him, and there is a way to contact him. You can share your opinion, you can schedule a request, or you can sign up for Bernie's newsletter. So if you go to the Senate website, you can find that. There's also a site for the United States House of Representatives, and that's also not an accessible website. It is very small print. However, you can put your zip code in there up here where it shows a map like of the 48 states. For some reason, we're excluding Hawaii and Alaska here, but if I put my zip code in, my zip code is 45171. And there's my representative, David Taylor. And this is my region here. I live in this area. And this map shows all the places that he represents. So all the way over to Athens, close to part of Cincinnati and the 275 loop. That's some of his as well. So we've got, it looks like Clinton, Fayette, Ross counties, Scioto County, Gallia County, Meigs County, Highland, Brown, Adams, Claremont. There's a lot of them there. So that's how you find them. So I'll give you links where you can find your legislators. Okay. Let me see if I can find my other thing here. Maybe that was it. But there's also one, you can look those up for the state of Ohio as well. And let me see if I can find those. I'm going to have to stop sharing here. But for the state of Ohio, you can find all kinds of stuff like find your legislator, just like that other one. Let me see. Let me share here. Here we go. So I clicked on mine ahead of time and I put my address in. And this is on that pluralpolicy.com, find your legislator link that I'll add. So here's my state legislators, Bob Peterson, and I know him pretty well. Shane Wilkin, kind of grew up with him. I think I played soccer against him. And then the federal legislators are listed out there again, Bernie Moreno, Dave Taylor, and John Husted. So you can click on these and learn all about them. You can also go to the Arc of Ohio's website, and here's where you find your legislators. I can click on there and put my address in. This is an example of a call to action center. It's under public policy at the Arc of Ohio. And if I click on this website to take action, I can share many different things. How Medicaid is a lifeline for people with disabilities. If I click on this purple link that says take action and add my address in, it will pull up an email for my legislators. Now, one of the things about that email is it already has stuff in there for you to say. I recommend wiping out most of it and telling your actual story. Don't get too wrapped up into what the ARC tells you to say or what any group tells you to say. They want to know how you feel. So that's something very important that you need to do. You need to tell your story. So put it in your words. They look at every email unless it looks like everybody else's email. So once you're done with that, you click send and it goes right to your legislator. So it's fairly easy to reach out to your legislators. There's only, what did we count up? 575 of them? Is that what it was, Adam?
535, 435
535.
representatives and 100 senators.
Okay, so less than what I thought. There's only 535 of them that represent all of the United States, millions and millions and millions of people. And they need to hear from you. We elected them. We can get them out of office as well by voting, right? We can either vote for them or against them. They know that, and they need to hear from you to hear how important you think these issues are. So I'm hoping that you take it seriously, that your groups need to speak up. It is okay to send an email from your group or to give a call from your group, but it's even better if you have, like I'm looking at Missy here, her group is rather large. She may have 60 people show up for a meeting, and it would be really awesome if 60 people told their story. And rather than one email going through, we have 60 now. So it's important for you to tell your individual story as well as your group story. When we represent people at the State House, we talk about how many hundreds of thousands of people in Ohio are affected by these issues. But it's even better when we have a room full of people that actually are affected by the issues. So it's important to reach them. It's fairly easy. And I will tell you, if you have trouble reaching your senators, your congresspeople, your state legislators, reach out to me and Michael, and we will make sure you've got the right contact information, and we will help you. We can even come to your group and help you send some emails out. We'll help you along the way. We want to see your voice being heard with all of the politicians. So that's, yeah, we got some clapping on that. That's awesome. So fairly easy to reach out to them, but we need to practice it. We need to practice what we say, how we say it, where we go. Like when we call for people to go up to the State House, sometimes it's just to sit in the audience and stare at the people that are making the decisions. Sometimes it's, hey, we need somebody to give a speech. So hopefully you'll get involved. Yep, 100 senators. So there's 2 from each state, 435 representatives. And then there are actually a couple extra that don't get to vote. So if you live in Washington, D.C., you pay taxes and you have a representative that doesn't get to vote. If you live in one of the areas where we own it, but they don't have their own governor, they don't get to vote. They have a representative, but they can't say anything.
That would be Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Wake, Midway, places like that. Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands are in the Caribbean, south of Florida. The others are west of Hawaii.
Yep. So they get to show up. They can talk. They don't get to vote. So our folks get to vote. So we need to really get the word out and speak to them.